Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
We've allowed thousands and thousands of people into our country, and there was no way to vet those people.
Oh, my God.
There was no documentation. There was no nothing.
Let's pray for Sweden, everybody, first off. A moment of silence. Je suis IKEA. I stand with Sweden. I stand with Sweden. Sweden stood with us after the Bowling Green massacre. Sweden stood with us after the Atlanta attacks. So now I stand with Sweden right here in America on Not My President's Day. That's what's going on. So you had like 9,000 people crammed into a hangar in Melbourne, and there are about 100,000 people protesting outside in the streets today that he's not our president. 9,000, 100,000. I think the against is more than the for, is what I think it is. But he said, you know, I couldn't believe he said that. I watched this wackadoodle press conference rally. You know, dictators have rallies. Can I just say this? Hitler had rallies. Mussolini had rallies. Franco had rallies. You know, you always forget about the Franco, don't you? Yeah, everybody does. I don't know why we're having rallies. I'm not sure why we're having rallies, but he said at his rally, look what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Now, remember, he's talking to an airplane hangar full of people who will believe any damn thing he says. Did you see that guy that was invited up on the stage, Mr. Huber or whatever it is? He's a biker from Fort Lauderdale who got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be the first online for his third Trump rally. He salutes a cardboard cutout of Trump every morning, prays for the president, and the Secret Service doesn't think he's a security threat. Of course they do. They tackled him before he got up on the stage. Now there's a story that they talk to each other on the phone all the time. Trump knows who he is. This is just insanity. This guy reminds me of Travis Bickle. Look it up. Travis Bickle, everybody, look it up. Robert De Niro said that he thought that Trump was like the Travis Bickle character. Oh, no. Au contraire, if I might speak French for a brief moment. Au contraire, this guy that was brought up on the stage is like Travis Bickle. I mean, this guy was just so freaking frightening. But anyway, okay. So what's worse, a president who makes things up or a president who's talking to Mr. Huber? And, oh, by the way, he clarified in his tweet, okay? He clarified. I wasn't talking about the terror. I was talking about something I saw on Fox News with Tucker Carlson. So is it scarier to you that he invites Mr. Huber up on the stage, a man who got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to drive all the way from Fort Lauderdale to Melbourne to be the first person online who has a cardboard cutout of Trump that he, totes around all day long and salutes in the morning and prays for Donald Trump? And then, I don't know. Or is it more frightening to you that he's getting news from Tucker Carlson and Fox? This is unbelievable. It's you look at what happened last night in Sweden. It didn't happen in Sweden. It happened on Fox News, which means it didn't happen. So I'll tell you what's worse. I'll tell you what's worse than taking your news from Tucker Carlson, whose bow tie, is about to spin around, that the president actually takes him seriously. I don't even think Tucker takes himself seriously. I think every morning he gets up and he goes, oh, I can't believe I got a gig on Fox News. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So this was just so amazing. But what's scarier is that Trump gets his news from Breitbart's Steve Bannon as part of the National Security Council, and apparently Alex Jones. There's a whole New York Times article today where Alex Jones claims that he's on the phone with the president all the time. Alex Jones, who said 9/11 was an inside job, Sandy Hook was a bunch of child actors, Everything's a false flag. The guy's drunk half the time on his show. He goes to a protest and the women standing there, he's trying to like goad them into some argument. They go, why do you have liquor on your breath in the middle of the day while you're interviewing me? Why? You know, you look at him, he attacked Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks at the convention, went into Cenk's room, and was like 3 sheets to the wind with Roger Stone. He had that 1980s jaw thing going on from the cocaine years. Oh, don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, I don't know what's scarier. Who is this president taking advice from? It's an amazing thing. He picks a national security advisor who then lies and has to be removed. He just picked a new guy today. And, you know, I don't really care if the new guy is a good guy or a bad guy. I'll tell you right now, working for the Trump administration disqualifies you for being anywhere near national security. It's just a freak of... If Bannon is on the national security team and he's part of the National Security Council, then anybody who said yes to that is bat crap or delusional or doesn't give a damn, just wants the title. It's unbelievable. I mean, he literally gets all this information from Fox News, Breitbart, and InfoWars. He's like that relative that you can't have dinner with anymore because he just babbles some crazy crap. You know what I'm saying? It's like impossible. It's so impossible. And so what was that report that Tucker Carlson had on the TV? It was some idiot guy who is alleging that Sweden is in the middle of a cover-up because they allowed 139,000 refugees into Sweden and that there's rape going on. You know, Sweden's got like very, very stiff penalties and a different definition of rape than we do here in the United States. Like here in the United States, it's always the woman's fault and you have to prove that you weren't wearing this and you weren't on this street at that time and it wasn't dark and why didn't you cross the street and what's with the outfit? No, in Sweden, they have a whole different... You remember, what's his face is sitting in the Ecuadorian embassy because he doesn't want to face rape charges in Sweden. And we would consider what he did harassment. Okay, you've got Trump on tape saying that he grabbed... You realize in Sweden, Trump would be a serial rapist by their definition of rape. So they're saying that there's this raping epidemic going on and it's all the immigrants that they brought in and all. And meanwhile, you've got the former ambassador to Sweden, the current ambassador to Sweden, the former prime minister of Sweden, the president of Sweden, all tweeting, what is he smoking? What is wrong with this man? I swear to God, I thought Trump was going to go, they need a wall between Sweden and Mexico or something for the immigrant problem, or they need a wall between Sweden and Syria. I mean, I don't even understand. You know how many countries you have to go through to be admitted into Sweden as a refugee? So by the time they get... And this idea that he says right there, we have no way to vet them. How many freaking times do I have to tweet? Or do I have to Facebook, or do I have to Periscope, or do I have whatever it is to disseminate this information that it takes 2 years to get vetted to come into the United States as a refugee, for God's sake, for the love of Pete, for crying out loud. Christopher Columbus! How many times? And, you know, you tweet it. And I've tried everything. I've tried articles. I've tried infographics where they don't have to read. Do you know what I mean? And they just sit there and they go, New York Times, LOL. So I'm like, well, what do you read? Breitbart. Conservative News Network. .net. .net. I mean, the right-wing media is it's been so fake for so long, and it's so interesting that now Donald Trump is trying to tell you that real journalism, you know, real people who really go out on the beat, who really do work up on Capitol Hill or who cover the White House, or people who actually, practice journalism and their articles can't get printed in newspapers until they're fully vetted, fact-checked, cross the T's, dot the I's. The ombudsman goes through it. They look at the facts, they look at the sources, they decide whether or not you've got, enough to go with a story, and then they print it. That's fake, but Alex Jones drunk saying that Sandy Hook was a bunch of child actors, that's real. Oh, it's breathtaking. And, the idea that he said that the media, that the now famous tweet that he had, did you see the fake news media failing at New York Times, at NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. The enemy of the American people. Oh, this made John McCain a little nuts. I got to tell you, this made a lot of people a little nuts. I have to tell you. Do you know where the expression "enemy of the people" actually comes from? Do you have any idea that no leader of the free world has ever used that expression in the history of the free world until Saturday? Do you know that? You know where that expression comes from? It comes from Nero. It comes from Nero, that failed Roman emperor who, was fiddling and his country falls into ruin, and why? Why? Because he spent too much money, too much construction costs, and a massive devaluation of the imperial currency, and Rome was in ruins, right? So he went on vacation. That's what Nero did. He went on vacation, just like Trump goes on vacation every single weekend. He saw music, he went to the theater, he took a chariot, went to the Olympic Games. Then he started talking, I'm going to build a canal. I'm going to build a canal. That's what I want to build now. The place is going bankrupt, right? He gets back home. Everybody's pissed off at him. Guess what happened to Nero? He killed himself. He went in a bathtub. He opened the vein. He bled out. And nobody used that term after Nero until Stalin, Lenin, Mao Zedong. Can't spell Trump without dung. Think about it. That's true. Check it out. No, Hitler used it a lot. He said each Jew was a sworn enemy of the German people. Actually, Goebbels wrote that for him in 1941. He said, if someone wears the Jewish star, he is an enemy of the people. Anyone who deals with him is the same as a Jew and must be treated accordingly. He earns the contempt of the entire people, for he is a craven coward who leaves them in the lurch and stands by the enemy. Okay, the Soviets did it. Lenin did it. Vladimir Lenin, a founder of the Bolsheviks, he said, the people's enemies are used to stigmatize anyone who doesn't fall in line. Enemies of the people. And whoever he decided was an enemy of the people was under suspicion and excluded from society. And then Stalin liked it so much that he branded that if he branded you an enemy of the people, that was a death sentence. You died. Okay, you died. And he used it against artists he didn't like. He used it against people he didn't like. He used it against politicians he didn't like. And if he called you an enemy of the people, you were branded and you were sent to a camp or you were killed. Oh, interestingly enough, the Russian ambassador suddenly died today of a massive heart attack, they say, in New York. The Russian ambassador is now dead. I find this just something to tell you. That's all. But for Lenin and Stalin, journalists and intellectuals, people who read, were the most hated enemies. And it looks like Donald Trump knows this. It looks like and then Chairman Mao, the Chinese dictator, he used it too. He created a famine that killed 36 million Chinese, but he told the media and he told everybody in Chinese society, if you don't go along with what I'm doing, you're an enemy of the people. You're an enemy of the people. And he rooted out teachers and intellectuals and artists, always the artists, and landlords, and anybody he found to be giving him a run for his money intellectually was an enemy of the people. Well, it's just so interesting that Trump uses the same words as Chairman Mao, as Lenin did, as Stalin did, as Nero did. Well, anyway, let me play you John McCain and then we'll grab a break here, okay? But check this out. This was on Meet the Press. Remember, John McCain and a lot of the Senate members are in Munich for an international conference. And you could just imagine what the talk is like, because it's insane what the speeches are like. I mean, McCain, I could play you some of his speech, but McCain had to actually stand up at this Munich conference and tell the world, I don't know, I'm not really sure, how you feel about what he's saying, but I would tell you, don't listen to anything he says. You know, I mean, I'm down to the point where I don't listen to anything he says. I'm going to watch to see what he does, but I don't listen to what he says because what he says is disgusting and terrible. And what he says is scaring the entire world. And I know that you're getting 3 different messages from 3 different people. I know that you've got, Mattis over here saying one thing about this. And you've got, Rex Tillerson over there saying another thing about this. And then you got the president over here saying another thing about, I understand. I don't know what to tell you, except we're going to have to watch what he does because you can't believe anything that comes out of this administration. It's really awful. I feel terrible having to tell you this. But then he went on Meet the Press, and this was the shot heard around the Sunday shows, I got to say.
The president sent Friday night. The fake news media, failing New York Times, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. You believe the press is the enemy? Do you believe any group of Americans are the enemy of another group of Americans?
I was talking about the period, as you know, of the New World Order. A fundamental part of that New World Order was a free press. I hate the press. I hate you especially. But the fact is, we need you. We need a free press. We must have it. It's vital. If you want to preserve, I'm very serious now, if you want to preserve democracy as we know it, you have to have a free and many times adversarial press. And without it, I'm afraid that we would lose so much of our individual liberties over time. That's how dictators get started.
Wow.
That's how dictators get started, with tweets like that?
They get started by suppressing a free press. In other words, in consolidation of power, when you look at history, the first thing that dictators do is shut down the press. And I'm not saying that President Trump is trying to be a dictator. I'm just saying we need to learn the lessons of history.
Wow. And that's why I tell you where this expression, enemy of the people, comes from. You need to learn the lessons of history. Anybody who uses enemy of the people and believes that there's one group of Americans who are the enemy of another group of Americans is going down the autocratic, dictatorial, megalomaniacal, dictator-like role. And there are so many people who are putting pen to paper to tell you this, to say dictator, to say autocrat, to say be very forewarned that this man does not have American interests at heart, that he is all about himself as the only person you can believe, as the only one who can fix it. Meanwhile, the government is gutted because very few people want to work with him.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit randyrhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.